Okay. Can you hear me, Roberta?
Yes.
Okay,
Well,
good. And you can see my screen too.
not yet.
I thought I shared it. Hold on. Okay, well, let me get out. Okay, let me see. Share. Okay, now, can you see it? Can you see it, Roberta? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I asked for the control.
Yeah, let me just move it back to the beginning. There. Okay.
Yes.
So, great. I'm sharing my screen, so I can't see if Stefano and Luke are on.
I can check. Let me check.
All right.
No, not yet.
Okay. So it's not quite 3 yet, so let's give it a couple minutes. I can't seem to get rid of that. Can you, Roberta?
No, I'm still looking at the participant, but
I think you have the. Let's see if I can get out of this and get rid of that. There. Okay, good. All right. So it's 3 o'clock. Good afternoon, everyone. Let's just wait 1 minute more before we start and see if a few more people join. And we only have 30 minutes, so then we'll start in earnest. So 1 more minute and we'll begin. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rhonda Facile, and I work for HL7 Europe. And I'm here today with my colleague, Dr. Roberta Gazzarata, and we're gonna do the second installment of the Hospitals on Fire webinar series, Implementing the EU Lab Report in Your Hospital. Today is focusing on medical terminologies. So before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping things. So please, let's hold questions until the end of Dr. Gazzarata's slides, but feel free to enter any questions that come up during the course of the presentation in the Q&A. So you're welcome to do that. At the end of the presentation, there'll be a short quiz. We hope you'll complete it. It's just for questions, no big deal, but it kind of helps to give us an idea on what you've learned. And everybody always asks this question, so I'll just say up front that we will post the slides and the recording from this webinar to the Hospitals on Fire website and to the XiA website. All right, so let's get started. So Hospitals on Fire. So what is Hospitals on Fire? Hospitals on Fire is a global community-driven initiative that helps hospitals adopt and implement the HL7 fire standard in real-world clinical settings. The goals of HOF are to support the practical FHIR implementations in hospitals, to share real-world case studies and lessons learned, and to build a global community of clinicians, IT professionals, and vendors, and for the purpose of accelerating adoption of interoperability healthcare standards in preparation for coming regulation from the European health data space. So XiA is another project that works closely with both HOF and with HL7 on FHIR, and it's a European Erasmus project that helps healthcare professionals, IT teams, universities, and digital health companies prepare for the coming European health data space. And the goal is simple: to build the skills Europe needs to make the EHDS work in practice. Pack for Skills is another education-related initiative, and this is an umbrella skills ecosystem, and it's a flagship action of the European skills agenda. The aim is to support public and private organizations with upskilling and reskilling so they can thrive through the new green and emerging digital transitions. Pack for Skills, XiA, and yet another IHI or IMI project called XiA connects around education in the areas of digital health skills, interoperability, training, and workforce upskilling. So everybody's working together to try to support what's coming with the EHDS. So I mentioned this is webinar number 2 in a series, and this is again in collaboration with HL7 Europe, XiA, and Hospitals on FHIR. And the goal is to deliver foundational information to help you all implement the EU lab report in hospitals across Europe. The webinar format, as you know, you're here today, it's monthly. It's going to be probably usually the third Thursday of the month, and the duration is 30 minutes. So we want to keep it short and to the point. So this is number 2. Next month, we'll have Luke Chatty here, and he will present on HL7 FHIR. I'm not going to read through all that's coming, but you'll have access to the slides later. And you'll also see announcements of these webinars on LinkedIn as we get closer to them. So with that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Gazzarata. Roberta.
Thank you, Rhonda. I saw that there is a Simon. I don't know if Simon wants to say something or if I can... Okay, I suppose I can present. Okay. So good afternoon, everybody. I am Roberta Gazzarata. I am a bioengineer, and I am a Deputy Technical Project Manager at HL7 Europe, and I also member of HL7 Italy board, and I'm tutor of the HL7 courses for HL7 Italy, and I'm already director and co-founder of Entropy. And inside the HL7 Europe, I am responsible for the definition of FHIR implementation guide and for a specific European project, and I'm the leader of the European Cancer Common Data Model project. So let's see the topic of today. We will start with the context, then we will see what is semantic interoperability. Then we will continue with an introduction of the medical terminologies, and then we will see how they can be adopted inside a laboratory report. And then we will finish with an overview of the practical implication for the hospitals. So we can say that everything starts with this very simple question, that is how we can ensure that the same, let's say, laboratory test, for example, a glucose, mean the same thing in 2 different hospitals, also across different countries. The very simple answer is by using medical terminologies. So let's start with the context. The European Health Data Space aims to support the primary use of data, but also probably maybe in the future, but with the intent of support after the secondary use of data by defining rules and infrastructure as MyHealth@EU, and defines different priority domains. And among these priority domains, laboratory appears as, let's say, the first one that was considered by HL7 Europe. That means that laboratory interoperability is not optional anymore. In fact, the XiA Europe Laboratory Report FHIR Implementation Guide was the first guide that was implemented at the European level for Europe with the aim to harmonize the content of the laboratory report to support exchange across the EU member states. Important aspect is that we don't want only to transfer data, but we want also to transfer the meaning so that we can ensure that the same clinical meaning travels with the data. So what is the model? The idea is that XiA Europe define the European baseline specification, and then each country can define their own country-specific guide with the idea that there is a, let's say, adaptation of this European baseline that allows to guarantee the core interoperability at the European level, but also support the local requirements, providing flexibility to all countries. So, what is semantic interoperability? Semantic interoperability means that different systems can interpret the exchange information in the same way. So we are not speaking only about sending data, but also sending the meaning of the exchanged data. So this means that the system must, let's say, speak the same language. And speaking the same language means using let's say, the same standard. So, for example, FHIR, but also the same vocabularies. So, a useful analogy can be the hashtag in the social media. In fact, if we don't define common hashtag, we cannot find all the possible events or all the possible posts of a specific event. So, in the same way, if you don't using standard terminologies, it's not possible to, let's say, find, for example, all the glucose tests that can be proposed, that can be produced by different laboratories in different hospitals and in different countries. So in FHIR, there is a specific element, that are the code element, that works like the hashtag. They are a specific element in which we can put, let's say, the meaning of what is let's say, the test that we are recording. So putting this code in this specific element, we can, let's say, provide meaning to the results. This means that the results can be reachable and computable. So in this, let's say, specific element, if we are using local codes, so codes that are refined only at the level of an hospital, they are meaningless outside the hospital. So it doesn't allow to make analysis and support the cross-border exchange. So exactly what is the scenario? The scenario is that we have a lot of the laboratory. Every laboratory has specific code system. And for example, for glucose, they can use different local code or with specific names, so with specific label. So the result is that if you are trying to query a HR system with to ask all the glucose result, we cannot find all the possible results if we don't use standard terminologies that provides, let's say, a shared identifier for the same meaning. And this point is essential if we want also to enable the data reuse and extract knowledge from the HR system. And this is fundamental for support the continuity of care, the education, research, and also the prevention of pandemic. And of course, also to support the cross-border exchange. So let's see an introduction of the medical terminologies. So in general, terminologies are set evolving because the timing is important, evolving set of concepts and terms that are defined for a specific purpose in a specific field. And medical terminologies are terminologies defined for the medical domain. They can be defined at a different level. We can have local terminologies when they are defined, let's say, at local level, so at the level of a single laboratory or a hospital. We can have regional or national terminologies defining at, let's say, at level of regions or countries, and then we have international vocabularies that are the standard one, that are the ones that allow to say ensure the semantic interoperability. In the medical field, there are four main, let's say, terminal name that comes back over again and again. We have SNOMED that is specific for the clinical concept. We have LOINC that is specific for the observation, ECD for the classification, and UNCUM for the units of measurement. And all together allows to, let's say, cover all the semantic meaning in the healthcare domain. Let's start with SNOMED. SNOMED is the systemized nomenclature of medicine clinical terms. It is used for the definition of diagnosis, procedure, clinical finding, body structure, specimen, and so on. It is characterized by an hierarchical structure, and it is concept oriented. So let's say it is based on different concepts that are related one to another, and it is support the post coordination. It means that we can combine together two concepts to create another new concept, support different languages, and it is regularly released as all the standard vocabularies. Here you have an overview of the structure of the model, in which you can see that there are all the concepts with a specific description and the relationship that allows to create the relation between the context. And here you have two practical examples of a single concept defined with an ID and a description. And in slide, you have an example of the possible relation between two concepts. Okay. Then LOIC is the logical observation identifier name and codes, and is, let's say, the core terminology for the laboratory test and for all the type of observation, and also for the type of document. It is, let's say, organized considering six main access models, so six main, let's say, properties that together allows to identify the thing that we have measured. So together allows to identify what we are measuring. Combining these six, let's say, properties together, we can have the name of the observed value, and it's important because it is coordinated with UNCUM, and it is released regulatory. And here you have an example of a glucose in serum or plasma, in which you can see what the value of the sixth property that I've mentioned. Then we have the International Classification of Disease that is used for the classification, but also for the epidemiology, for the mortality report, and sometimes also for the billing. It provides three main versions that are still working together, because there are each country can define what version adopt. It is organized with an alphanumeric hierarchical structure, and it is focused for the epidemiology, and so it is regularly released. And here you have an example of the same concept in three different versions of ECD. Then we have UCUM. UCUM is an identifier code for units of measure that is used every time that we need to indicate the measure of something that is observed. So inside an observation, a laboratory test, and so on. It is organized with the atomic units, and that together can be combined to create derived units. It is important because it enables the unit conversion and allows the unambiguous interpretation of the data inside a report. And here you have some example of units. Then let's see how these terminologies are adopted inside a laboratory report. Starting with SNOMED. SNOMED here in this example, it is used for identifying the type of specimen, or also for the body site. And in particular, here you have some example of the value set. We will see details what is the value set. So example of code that can be adopted for the specimen type or for the body side. All these codes, of course, are defined inside SNOMED. For LOINC, it is used, for example, in the code that indicates the type of report. So to indicate that we are working with a laboratory report, and of course in all the observations. So in all observations that represent what we are testing, we will have a specific code, LOINC code, that represent what we are measuring. So here you have the example of the laboratory codes that can be adopted for specific observation, and also that LOINC code that represent the laboratory report. UNCUM is adopted every time that we have an observation. So here in this example, we have a ration value, in which you can see that UCUM is used in the unit element, so in the value attribute of the unit element. So important, let's say, concept is value set. Value set is a set of values, so a collection of code that can be adopted for a specific element inside a specific context. So they are set of value that we defined can be adopted for a specific element, and these are fundamental to allows to the implementation guide to, let's say, constrain the semantics, indicating what code we can use and what code we should use. So here we have the challenge. The challenge is that we have different countries with different laboratories. So here, for example, we have 5 laboratories from 5 countries that use local codes for manage laboratory tests. So, for example, a glucose. So the idea is that, as mentioned before, they cannot use the local codes, but we have to decide what is the corresponding LOINC code. So we have the, let's say, the mapping challenge. So defining for each laboratory test defined at the local level the corresponding standard code. So here you can see that the LOINC code is it's the same. So let's see what are the implications for the hospital. There are different challenges. Someone that can be defined at, let's say, a technical level, because we have to arrange, let's say, from the technical point of view, connection with the infrastructure and tools like terminology service. But also the important thing is that we have to map, as mentioned, the local terminologies to the standard terminologies, and we have to consider that the terminologies evolves in the time. For example, LOINC release 2 or 3 versions per year. So we need also to, let's say, maintain this mapping during the time. But also some organizational problem, because to allow the personnel to be able to select the correct international code in the international standard, we have to train the healthcare personnel. And we have also to, let's say, organize the mapping at the regional or national or international level. So define when we need to move to another, for example, another LOINC version. And so consider that this effort can be continuous in the time. Okay. So only a word about the terminology service. Terminology service are tool important because can allow to support this activity, because they provide, let's say, the access to stored and maintained terminologies, so they can be maintained during the time. They provide the access with APIs, so for example with FHIR interface that allows to manage the mapping also between the local and the international standard. Here you have only an example of how they can be adopted. They can be adopted, for example, to validate if a laboratory report contains a correct LOINC code. And then this is the last one. So what can be an important aspect? The hospital need to start early to know that there is this problem, and they will need the effort to stay updated with this mapping activity. It is fundamental to collaborate, because it is possible to, let's say, share and reuse mapping performed by other hospitals to help in this adoption. There are tools with also based on AI that can support the activities. We have to consider that there is we need to, let's say, invest in training, and of course plan a long-term maintenance of this mapping. Here you have some links to standard and guidelines, and of course there are different communities in which you can collaborate and work to see to discuss about the problems. Hospital or FHIR, of course, will be one of the right place. And of course, so standard medical terminologies are fundamental to support semantic interoperabilities and to support the laboratory report. LOINCs, NOMEN, and UNCUM are fundamental. Inside the implementation guide of HR7 Europe, it is indicated where and how these terminologies can be adopted. It is important to know that some mapping activities are required, so you need to use tools and consider training, and of course the benefit outweighs the cost. In fact, you will be able to support the continuity of care research and also the compliance to the EHDS. Okay, finished. Rhonda?
All right, thanks, Roberta. So now we're going to move on to the question and answer session in the moments that we have left. This is the QR codes to the quiz. So while we're looking at the Q&A and deciding which questions we can answer in the time that we have, please, go to this site and take the quiz. It's just 4 questions, super easy. Roberta, can you see the Q&A on your screen? Because I'm sharing, so I can't see.
In the chat, let me check.
No, it should. There's a Q&A tab there. If you just say more up in the header, it should open up and give you a drop down for Q&A.
Let me share.
Yep, you can just see, and then in the meantime, no?
No, why I
Okay.
cannot see it? No, this is another thing.
You might have to click on the dots up in the header. Yeah, where it says more. It says more, and then there's 3. Yeah. And there'll be a drop-down menu. You can click Q&A. Okay, well, while you're looking, I'll ask a question. So, Roberta, you mentioned terminology bindings. How strict are these bindings in practice? And what should an implementer do if the required code is not available or it can't be used in a specific local context or a local hospital?
Oh, no, in the chat there are some,
They're in the chat. Okay.
Yes, they are in the chat.
Okay.
Okay, let me check, there are a lot of questions. Could you record? Of course, the full recording, okay. Okay, there is some on side the ECD. One side, both ECD and Snowman can code Derozir. What's the decision rule for choosing one or the other in lower report content? Yes, this was defined by the, let's say, the working group that works on the laboratory report. So it was based on the experience of the ones that are working on the laboratory report. But of course, this is only the first version of the laboratory report, and this means that every country must, let's say, read it, try to use it, and see if it can be applicable in each specific country. Because, for example, in Italy, we started from the HR7 Europe FHIR implementation guide, then we move to the HR7 Italy work implementation guide, and we see if it can support the needs of the Italian content. In the case the guide doesn't allow to support all the needs of all the countries, each country can of course ask for changes specification, and so see in case if they prefer to use terminologies or another, so that we can also consider the possibility to have in the same, let's say, code element 2 code system. This is possible. So of course, consider that it's all evolving. So if every contract has if each country has specific problems, they can of course ask to specific changes to the guide.
Great. Thanks,
Yeah.
Roberta. We're past time, but we can hang on for a few more moments and take a couple more questions, I think. Yeah?
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead. You can answer a couple more questions. Yeah.
This is the same. I think that we can use the same answer. I can post my question. Clinical autonomy cannot represent. Yes, yes. This is the adoption of semantic. It's, let's say, a great problem. That in fact the adoption of semantics needs to consider a multidisciplinary, let's say, team that start from the clinician, but also to the IT responsible, but also to the administrative one, because this activity is, let's say, very requests a lot of effort. So we need also to consider this aspect. So it is not only a problem of the, let's say, the medical staff, but it must be considered as, let's say, a more a bigger effort also from other type of figure, and of course the administration must know that there is this big effort. Yes, another question on AI. Yes, it is the AI. There are tools in the market that are using the AI to, let's say, to support the mapping. This means that based on the description of the local terminologies, can decide or can, let's say, propose what are the most similar concept inside the standard one. This is based, of course, on mathematics algorithms, based on, let's say, on a specific let's say, algorithm, but they can very useful because they can provide you an help to choose the correct code.
Okay, one more, Roberta, and then we'll end the webinar. Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that we have almost finished. What is it? What is the expensive system behavior when? Yes, of course, the idea is that each system should have inside itself the mapping between the local and the international standard, because it allows not only to depend to the terminologies. But of course, if a terminology service is well configured, it has a lot of redundancy, so it should be available and provide the access in case the local is not terminology is not available. It is possible to continue to use only for, let's say, for the maintenance of the process, the local codes only, let's say, as draft version, until you will not have the final version of the document with the standard code correct.
All right, thanks, Roberta. And thank you for your presentation and for your time today. And thanks everyone for joining us for this webinar. We hope it was useful. Join us in April, the third Thursday of the month, for webinar number 3. That'll be focused on HL7 FHIR. And we wish you a good rest of your day. Thank you very much. Bye.